Whether you like it or not, Payton Thorne will be the biggest storyline coming out of A-Day.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zach Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. We are dapping it up on this Friday, the final show before Auburn's annual A-Day game. Darrell Dapprich hanging out with us, the Montgomery radio legend himself. We'll talk about the most important thing to watch for on Saturday, as well as our predictions as far as A-Day MVPs and which side of the ball is going to win and all that good stuff later in the show. But whether you like it or not, Payton Thorne will be the most discussed topic and player coming out of A-Day, regardless of how he performs. Darrell, if he excels and the passing game looks great, I think there's going to be a massive rush of folks that say one of two things. One, yes, Payton Thorne is the guy. This is what it looks like with a spring under his belt. Or there'll be the group of folks that say, oh, well, it's just A-Day. It's just a spring game. And then if he performs poorly, there's going to be a bunch of people that say, I told you so. So regardless of whatever Payton Thorne does tomorrow, Darrell, that's the biggest topic coming out of A-Day.
I think we have to quit treating this like any of this is abnormal. I think that I understand that there's a faction of Auburn fans that are like, I'm so tired of hearing about Payton Thorne and about the quarterback position. But look, the reality is we are making this more than it should be, that in any realm of college football, quarterback is the most polarizing position that people talk about. It's very rare that you are all on the same page about the position. It happened with Cam Newton. It happened with Nick Marshall. But even somebody like Bo Nix at Auburn was a polarizing figure amongst fan bases. So to expect this to be any different with Payton Thorne is really, we just need to relax and go, this comes with the territory. This is expected. This is how it should be. So that being said, you are 100% right. The overreactions on both ends of the spectrum will happen. The weather's going to be nice Saturday. Sure. We'll talk about later how many available weapons Payton Thorne's going to have in his arsenal. If he comes out in A-Day against what we consider to be a good secondary at Auburn and a good linebacking core and lights it up, I don't know how they keep stats. It's so confusing, but let's say his stats are really impressive. There will be a faction of Auburn fans that say, see, told you, you should have given him a chance. It's coaching. It was Phil Montgomery. He didn't have the weapons. All the reasons we've said he could improve. On the flip side, Zach, if he looks like crap and misses easy throws like the 10-yard throws you were talking about at our last practice we saw, or throws behind people or stares down receivers, then that faction will come out and say, oh, we're going to win 5 games. Either way, keep it down the middle. I think it'll be an overreaction either way. And we need to just be level and even-keeled about it, and let's wait till September against a legitimate opponent before we make an opinion one way or the other.
Yeah, he is going to be a little handicapped, like you said, tomorrow, because his options in the passing game, not only his, but Hank Brown, Holden Gerner, Walker White, any of these guys that are throwing the football, these receivers have been battling injuries over the last few weeks of spring practice. And to me, I think that's something that we've got to kind of keep in mind. But also, it's like you hinted at this when we did the show on Wednesday. Like, these guys have been hurt consistently over the last 20 to 24 months. And so it's like, okay, at some point, when can we rely on these guys to be healthy? Because it's like, if you can't get through a spring consistently, you can't get through a fall season consistently. That's just kind of how it works. And look, I think a lot of these guys that are returning, these guys that are battling injuries, Jay Fair, I think it's important. Camden Brown has been, you got to show me. I think he's been pretty consistent in that. Caleb Burton, I think, is a guy that we saw prove enough towards the end of last season where it's like, okay, I expected, you expect him to be a part of this. And then Coy Moore, I think opinions are all over the place of what Coy Moore can bring to this offense. But for the most part, like, I don't think any of those guys are going to be top 2 or 3 in receiving yards for Auburn. this year. In no particular order, I think Cam Coleman, Robert Lewis, and Rivaldo Fairweather will be Auburn's 3 leading receivers. If I had to pick a 4, I'm kind of leaning towards Perry Thompson. We'll see. We can discuss that over the course of the summer. If it's not him, I'm high on Caleb Burton as far as his ability, but can he stay on the field is kind of a concern up to this point. But yeah, like you said, Darrell, whoever's at quarterback, they're not going to have a full slate of weapons at their disposal. And I do think that's concerning. And I do think that's something we should keep in mind.
And throughout this whole process with the receiving room, I have changed my mind and have come full circle on what I believe is the most important aspect or attribute that could allow Payton Thorne to improve. And I'm just going to say this. I mean, it's not controversial. I had heard things behind the scenes about how Payton Thorne was not a big Philip Montgomery fan. They did not get along. They were not on the same page. Well, me and you hinted at that at practice Tuesday. The next day, Payton Thorne goes on the next round show and makes a comment about how there was no detail, there was no structure, the preparation was I mean, if that doesn't come right out and make you connect the dots of what he felt like his, I don't know, maturation, his tutelage under the quarterback position I heard he didn't get a lot of time. Philip Montgomery didn't spend a lot of time with quarterbacks. Ken Austin will.
Well, and let's pause just for a second and think back to any time Hugh Freeze had the opportunity to defend Philip Montgomery last year, and he never did. I think expected him to be like, well, some of that's on me too. He never really did that.
I mean, I heard that, again, I don't know where I read this at, but it was a legitimate source that Payton Thorne was a little frustrated that when they got to Nashville, there wasn't a film session before the Music City Bowl. And so those are if you're starving to be developed as a quarterback and to have that tutelage, Ken Austin is we talk about Cam Coleman, we talk about the receivers. My whole point of view has changed towards what Payton Thorne might be able to do improvement-wise based upon that interview alone. The preparation, the lack of detail. If he gets that and he's in the right hands of the right play caller, i.e. Hugh Freeze, and he's raved about Derek Nix too. None of this is under the radar. None of this is coy or secretive. It's obvious. Connect the dots with listen to what he says.
He said it with his media availability yesterday too. It wasn't as pointed, but there was a lot of guys that weren't doing the little things right, that weren't showing up consistently. I kind of feel like he was talking about players and coaches to some extent with some of the stuff that he said with all of that. And he's been consistent with his messaging, and it doesn't feel like he's just pointing a finger either. Like, I think he's actually like frustrated, and it's like, we needed to fix this. Hugh Freeze agreed clearly. And, we'll see what happens as far as the maturation and progress of Payton Thorne in this passing offense. Because look, Payton Thorne was not perfect a year ago, and in a lot of games, I wouldn't even say he was good. But it's really hard to be a good quarterback when there's no separation. And a lot of the times, and I was told from a source that the offense would get out there and they didn't know what the play was, and they didn't know what the personnel was.
Horrible.
And that would happen multiple times a game, which makes sense. I think think back how many times they had to call a timeout, or there'd be a delay of game, and it's like, okay, 1st and 10 with an offense that can't move the football. It's like, what is going on here? And as an offensive coordinator, you can't allow that to happen. So hopefully with Derek Nix, with Ken Austin, and then obviously with Hugh Freeze being, having a much larger part in the game plan and the scheme, hopefully everything falls into place there.
I'll say this real quick, though, and to play devil's advocate a second. No lack of preparation, no mix up has you stare down a receiver and throw 2 pick sixes too. That's got to get cleaned up. That has 100%. Nothing to do with coaching. So that aspect is on him. And so,
and there's a deeper conversation here. I've talked to several folks in different markets that are just kind of, doing their scouting and getting a feel of the rest of the SEC. And we talked about, if Payton Thorne could just be an average SEC quarterback, and I stopped them, and I was like, first off, I agree with you, but tell me 8 quarterbacks in the conference that you feel like Payton Thorne is better than right now. And it's really tough to make that list. And so can he start that ascension tomorrow? We'll see. So regardless of what he does, Payton Thorne's performance, good or bad, will be the most discussed topic coming out of A-Day. But, Darrell, it's not the most important. We'll tell you what the most important topic is in just a moment, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Robinhood. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim is Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC is a registered broker-dealer. Darrell, the most important aspect of Saturday's A-Day is on the offensive and defensive line, specifically the defensive line and how they react and how they are able to compete with the offensive line. We got to see a ton of practice earlier this week, and the offensive line was better than the defensive line. And we've talked before, you and I, about depth. We've talked about, are the starters good? It's just who are they going to rotate, or if somebody goes down, what in the world are they going to do? I'm expecting some big runs on Saturday to be allowed by this defense. Starters, the second team, I'm expecting big runs to happen. So the best case scenario for Auburn is Auburn's defensive line overperforms and limits the opposing rushing attack, whether it's Jarquez Hunter, Damari Austin, Jeremiah Cobb, it doesn't matter who it is, Brian Batty. I want to see the defensive line dominate, and then also the rotation. How we see certain guys fill in, who's with the ones, who's rotating with the ones versus being a two. I think all of that is going to be very, very important for all of us to watch and learn together.
Yeah, it's kind of a catch-22 because here's what happens. Let's say Auburn's running backs are as elite as we think they are, and their offensive line is really come together like we think it has, and we're excited about it being a strength of the team. And so they have a good performance. Does that say more about how dominant the offensive line and running back room is, or how poor the defensive line has developed? On the flip side, if you get your wish and the defensive line dominates Saturday, are you not going to come out of A-Day a little concerned about our offensive line? Okay,
I will, because I trust this offensive line. There's no way it's worse than a year ago, and I thought the offensive line last year was pretty good. I think the rushing attack is going to be really, really solid. I think there's a lot of variables at this point of the offseason. There's no question about it. I think the variable with the smallest amount of fluctuation is the offensive line. I feel really confident with pretty much everybody's assessment of this offensive line. I think it's a pretty good offensive line. I think it's a top half offensive line in the SEC. I think that is the measuring stick, not the defensive line.
So I agree with that if Auburn's going to, I just think Auburn's going to find a way to run the football against even a really, really good defensive line. I think I think a top 3 run defense in the SEC in 2024 is going to have a hard time keeping Auburn under 100 yards. That's just how good I feel about the running back room.
I agree with
the offensive line. Now, where I want to see progress and where I want to see if this offensive line is what we think it is in pass protection. Is, Percy Lewis what we think he is in that aspect? Is Connor Lew another year picking up guys trying to shoot the gaps? So if Payton Thorne sits back there and Hank Brown and has time, then I'm not going to be as concerned. Now, I may come out of that and go, we're not getting any rush. Auburn's not getting any rush, right? I mean, that's what's going to happen. You have the offensive line playing at elite level, and Auburn can't rush the quarterback. And then against a lesser offensive line, we get 4 sacks in conference play. So I just think, I'll tell you this, watching Jalen McLeod at practice, if he gets blocked, then Auburn has a Outland winner on its offensive line because he is unblockable. So we'll see. I think there's a lot of ways you can look at that. It's fun. That's what makes it fun to have this kind of conversation because one set of eyes will say, ooh, I'm concerned about the offensive line, the defensive tackles, and the Bucks are getting pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And the other side may say, we suck if they don't get any pressure. It's just a real
the way you
bag.
bring that up, Darrell, is I'm really trying to think of a scenario where I would leave 8A aside from an injury that would be catastrophic. But I'm trying to think of something that could happen on Saturday that changes how I think about the offensive line going into fall. And I can't think of anything. I think Auburn could really struggle, and as you'd be like, that's fine, whatever. I believe in this offensive line. I believe in this coaching staff with what they've done with the offensive line so far. Offensive line coach Jake Thornton has been exceptional since he's arrived on the play. I mean, what he has done in a year and a half, less than a year and a half, is so like being underreported and under-discussed with the amount of talent that's already come in, the amount of talent that's already been developed, and the amount of talent that's committed in this upcoming class. Plus, especially if Broderick Shull commits to the Auburn Tigers. He followed me on Twitter the other day. That's usually a good sign. And so to me, I just trust him. I just trust that the O-line's going to work out at this point. So I don't think there's anything that could happen tomorrow that changes my mind on that.
To me, it is, you have to go back to the Tuberville regime to where you consistently feel good about the offensive line going into the year. And the ironic part about that, I don't remember who the offensive line coach was back then, but Auburn did not get a lot of 5-star offensive linemen, but they put dudes in the league.
Yeah.
They had a lot of 3-star guys that ended up being all SEC tackles and guards.
It's a hard position to evaluate.
It is a hard, and I see that blueprint or that template starting to evolve and emerge with this offensive line staff and these offensive, because right now, and I said this a month ago, it's the first time I can remember in a very long time where I feel comfortable about a two deep. We could sit through and go, yeah, this dude, and then that's without even some freshmen coming in that could make a difference. So yeah, I'm really excited about that. That's why I'm going to temper my disappointment if the defensive line gets manhandled a little bit, because I'm going to say, you know what, that's just because you got one of the top 3 offensive lines in the SEC. Now, should there be some sort of push and some sort of give? Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not going to get beat like that consistently. And if Auburn's defense does, it could be a problem. But I'm just looking forward to seeing the Durkin schemes. Right, he's a guy that I think if the offensive line does start to dominate at halftime, we'll make an adjustment, bring different people, do different things schematically, and change that. How much of that we'll see in A-Day, I don't know, but I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah. Yeah. To me, it's all about the defensive line. What can the defensive line do tomorrow? If we're all talking about how impressive Jalen McLeod is, that is a win for the Auburn Tigers. Seriously.
Yeah, and Jason Jones, he clogged the middle. If you ran, you better run outside because there was nothing between the tackles. That's what I want to see, or the narrative I want to hear is that they couldn't run the ball up the middle.
Yeah,
he clogged it. They had to bounce it outside to get their yards.
That's right.
Stuff like that, little nugs that we'll try to drop for the folks Saturday.
Yeah, and look, it's been a pretty quiet spring for Keldrick Falk, who is one of the more important players on Auburn's 2024 roster. Let's go. The lights are on. The cameras are watching you. Let's have a day, Keldrick Falk. That would be huge for Auburn, be huge for the defense, be huge for everyone. Be huge for everyone involved. So watch that defensive line versus the offensive line, and we'll, of course, have a better recap for that when the game's over. Darrell, let's give our predictions. Who's going to be the 8A MVP? Who's going to impress? Will the offense be able to climb out of that hole and be victorious when it's all said and done? We'll discuss in just a moment right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Darrell, you love Game Time. I love Game Time. It's how I buy all of my tickets now. And Game Time is they're now an authorized ticket marketplace for Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app, they actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch because Game Time gets it. They get the schedules are crazy, and they want to reward sports fans that are just kind of picking up at the last second. It's like, we can go. Let's go to the Braves game tonight. Let's go to the Auburn baseball game later this afternoon. Whatever it may be, Game Time has you covered, and you have used Game Time.
I have. I used it for some spring training tickets. I've used them for a concert. It's just easy. It's right there on my phone. It's a one-stop shop.
Mm-hmm.
I can get what I mean, that's the difference, right? I mean, we go to more events than just sporting events. And so if you can go to the same app for 3 different type of events, plays and theater, concerts and ball games, what else do you need?
You didn't say it right. The theater.
Well, I can't. That's you, and you
can't say the theater.
Not as good as you. That's your deal.
You're
patented. The theater.
I think you nailed it.
That was kind of English. I kind of went English there. I kind of went Shakespeare.
I think you want to be a little bit English when you talk about
English.
The theater. But yeah, be sure to check out our friends at Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege. That is a new promo code, LOCKEDONCollege, for $20 off with a free Game Time app. Who will win A-Day MVP? I think it's going to be a running back, and I'm thinking it's going to be Jeremiah Cobb or Brian Batty, because those are guys that are going to get touches with the first team, possibly, with the second team, possibly, and then by necessity with the third group, just because. So I think from a touches standpoint, it's going to be the Jeremiah Cobb and Brian Batty show. Looks like you agree with me.
Well, it's a look of frustration because we didn't talk about this at all, who our choices were going to be. And I was going to drop the Jeremiah Cobb nug and make it be like a surprise and out of the blue, unexpected. Yeah, no one would have that. It's under the radar. And the first name that comes out of your mouth. So I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to stick with my gut. Jeremiah Cobb is who I think is going to be the A-Day MVP.
All right, I'll change mine. Should I just change mine? Did you just bully me from changing my answer?
Well, I couldn't believe you did that to me again. You mind melted me.
Sure. I'm going to go. I'm trying to think with an offensive player, then we'll pivot to defense.
I think someone that would be a second choice would be good, but I'll let you choose it.
On offense?
Yeah.
Who?
Robert Lewis.
See, I think he's going to be just with the ones. I think the guys that kind of have the good, big A-Day games are guys that are like fringe one guys that rotate in, and then they play with the twos a lot as well. And I don't think Robert Lewis is going to play with the twos. That's why I was thinking like Bryce Kane, maybe. And he's a freshman. So I think if you're a newcomer or a freshman, you get a little extra juice in there as far as hype goes. Because they'll walk around and hand us, voting things for, who's the A-Day MVP. And I could see that being one that a lot of guys kind of gravitate to. So Bryce Kane, I'll pivot and say Bryce Kane just for the sake of the show.
Now we're going to find out who our backup kicker is going to be because McPherson is not kicking tomorrow.
Sounds like it's going to be Towns, the preferred walk-on kid from Auburn High School.
So that'll be fun to watch him kick a little bit, right? I mean, that's a good. I like him.
Got to think he'll be special teams MVP. So we're in agreement there. And then on defense, I think Jalen McLeod. I'll say Jalen McLeod here. Nope. You want me to pivot? If that's what you here. Who is yours, Darrell?
Mine is Jalen McLeod, Zach. People are going to think this is scripted. They're lying. Right hand to the Lord. We didn't talk about it. And mine was like Jeremiah Cobb, Jalen McLeod, and that's who Zach chose as well. I'll tell you what.
Stick with it. I've got other ones.
I made you choose a different offensive one, so I'll choose a different defensive guy. All right, you ready?
No, I've already changed my answer.
Sylvester Smith.
That's who I was going to change it to. I've got one more, so that's fine. That's fine.
Sorry, I'm killing you. Go ahead. We're brothers from another mother. Let's go. Who else?
I just want to say, and several people of all the haters, which there are many, said that there was no way Sylvester Smith was going to start ahead of some of these guys that are ahead of him. And Sylvester Smith was the starter for like the whole practice viewing window.
Yes, he was.
So y'all can say what you want. You can say that he didn't look good in the bowl game. You're wrong, but you can say whatever you want. Sylvester Smith is him. He is him. And I wrote a story at auburndaily.com yesterday. 3 guys you need to watch. And I said Sylvester Smith. So I said Sylvester Smith, Jalen McLeod, and Payton Thorne. But I'm going to go with DeMarcus Riddick for a potential defensive MVP because I think you could possibly see him rotate with the ones at some point. And I also think you could see him with the 2s and the 3s. And so I think the opportunity for him to get some tackles, potentially sacked, depending on how they use them and how much scheme and stunts and blitzes they do. But also maybe he'll have an opportunity for an interception. So I'll go with DeMarcus Riddick.
That's a good one, man.
Hey,
Mine
thanks,
was
dude.
so
Appreciate
easy.
that.
My Jalen McLeod one was like a no-brainer, but I thought I was really being sneaky with Jeremiah Cobb. And my second choice is going to be Jaron Thompson.
Okay.
So I'll have him as my backup to McLeod as defensive.
Well, there's
MVP.
going to be a defensive back that gets a pick, right? Like somebody's going to get an interception tomorrow, and it's just who's it going to be?
I want to see somebody house it. You house it, you pretty much guarantee that you get that MVP.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that just kind of depends on what the route is and where people are on the field. But yeah, Jaron Thompson could be that guy. We saw J.C. Hart get an interception.
Oh, I love him.
Earlier this week. You know who I love?
Terrence Love.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens. But Caleb Harris is a guy that we've heard a ton about. He's kind of consistently been with the twos. It seems like the true freshman. A lot of young guys back there. I just think somebody's going to have a day. I think somebody's going to have a day back there. But yeah, Sylvester Smith is him. Champ Anthony is another guy. It's just like quietly, he's going to be Auburn's starting nickel unless something crazy happens, which is wild to me. He was like the last guy added in last year's class. It's just like, yeah, sure. Come on. And
so was Daniel Thomas.
Yeah.
It was the safety. He was the last guy added in one of Auburn's classes, and look how he turned out. He's in the league right now. So.
Yeah, they're different type players, but as far as like that last minute adds, like sure,
kind of, it's like
an
afterthought type feeling, and then all of a sudden you can't keep him off the field, and that's what you love.
Yeah, he's so small though. I do worry about that to some extent, but we'll see. But yeah, everybody who talks about him says that he's a dude. So worth following. All right, so yeah, we did our 3 MVP. Okay, does the offense come back and win? What, they're starting down like 27-0. See if the offense can. You think they win?
31-27.
Okay, 4 touchdowns and a field goal. Got it. I don't think it's a bad bet. I think it's kind of slanted for the offense to do that.
Right.
So if they don't do that, I think that's a talking point in and of itself.
I think last year was a tie. I'm trying to remember. I was walking off the field.
It was a walk-off field goal, right?
Yeah. It
was a weird feeling.
Yeah.
It was a weird sensation.
Very rainy, very adverse conditions. So I'm looking forward to seeing it get thrown around the yard. I hope
so. We need that. So, Darrell, how can people check out everything you've got going on?
Follow me on Twitter, Dap6410. Something that's going to be new this year that I'll just go ahead and mention because we're going to debut it Saturday or Sunday, doing a little column for Auburn Daily after the football games, just some observations, some takeaways, that type of thing. And then I'm with you twice a week on Wednesdays and Fridays. And I think we haven't announced yet tomorrow if we're going to go ahead and post that show, the A-Day reaction show, Saturday or Sunday. We'll just
post it Sunday morning. Sunday morning. Yeah, I don't want to be in a hurry getting home Saturday and stuff. So yeah, we'll post it Sunday morning like we do during the season. And so we'll be back Sunday morning. Thank you guys so much for getting us to 16,000 subscribers on YouTube. Woo! Biggest Auburn podcast. And it's that way because of you. Thank you guys so much for all of that. Please like this video. Please subscribe. Have a great A-Day, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow. Nope, we'll see you Sunday. This has been Locked On Auburn.